1967, Bob was a missile launch officer at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. He says a UFO hovered over his nuclear missile site and disabled all the missiles.
And so, Carl, here's the million-dollar question. Do you believe that a higher form of non-human intelligence has visited this planet?
Right. So non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new, and it's been ongoing. And there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that.
Roswell, New Mexico is a quiet city of just 26,000 people. The majority of the population are ranchers or military.
And so, Carl, that is quite a bold statement. I'm wondering, and I'm curious, how confident are you that that is true?
There's zero doubt.
I love that. I love it when Carl Nell says zero doubt, because really that's what there is. There's zero doubt. We know we're not alone. It's just a matter of getting America to know it and getting the government to finally come out and say it. My name's Dale, and I want to welcome you to my channel, Observer of Anomalous Objects. I'll tell you how much I appreciate you being here. Also, I want to give a shout out to my good friend Darcy Weir. He's a filmmaker and director, and he put together that intro for me. And so I just love it. I imagine you enjoyed it quite a bit too. But we're here to talk with Matt Laslo of Askapo. He's a reporter in Washington, D.C. And let me tell you something. We are very, very blessed to have this guy with us. I mean, he is our ears on the ground. He's our feet on the concrete over there. He's checking things out for us. And I don't think there's a reporter I respect more than I do Matt. And he's got the credentials to go with it. Master's from Johns Hopkins University in public affairs, if I remember right. And how many years, I didn't have that in my notes. How many years have you been doing this reporter thing? We know you're a professor. We know you're the professor, but let's talk about you being a reporter.
I've been chasing the nation's 535 lion-ass politicians for 18 years now.
Wow. That's a long time. That's almost 2 decades. Well, I sure appreciate you being
I'm a quasi-swamp creature, so be a little skeptical of me, but I try to avoid the Kool-Aid as much as possible.
Well, the good ones, it doesn't really attach to them too much, and you're one of the good ones, that's for sure. Let me show everybody where you work. This is where you work right here. And this is
a picture of me in the background.
Yeah, that's you in the back, and then you got, there you are, man. Let me just tell you, that's the man. Before we move on, I want you to go ahead. I saw it on your X page and on Askapo. We just finished up with a hearing on Wednesday. I'll tell you what, everything I'm hearing is good. I mean, even some people that were skeptical going in, one person said he wasn't going to watch it, and he decided to, and he was very pleased with it. But let's go ahead and talk about this breaking news, because we have another hearing coming up, and it's been confirmed. So why don't you fill us in on that, Matt?
When it rains, it pours.
All right.
70 years of silence, and then ooh. So Congress, we just had, as you were saying, House Oversight Committee just had their second public UAP hearing, which is historic. Having 2 public UAP hearings in one session of Congress, that just finished. Well, now the Senate is going to take their swipe at it, and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand from New York, she did a hearing, I think back in 2022, like the one that the House Intel Committee did that year was the first UAP, UFO hearing in 50 years. So that one got all the attention, but the Senate did one. And so Gillibrand, even while many in the community are like very skeptical of her, they're, she stayed engaged on the issue. And if anything, she's been, because remember, she ran for president. She's been like, I think she senses that on UFO Reddit, there's 2.8 million people. So I think she like gets that, but she's also one of only 6 members of the 100 member body of the U.S. Senate she's on both the Intelligence Committee and the Armed Services Committee. Armed Services Committee, that's the military. That's the military committee. Intel, that's kind of everything. And so she really gets a seat at the table from a couple different, very, like, she's just there in the center of it. And she's one of the few people, it'll actually be interesting in this next Congress because former House Intel chair Adam Schiff, who is the one who allowed Andre Carson to have that first hearing in 50 years, he's now going to be a member of the Senate, and he's been engaged on the issue. So we'll see. But yeah, the Senate, they're doing a UAP hearing. Gillibrand tells me initially she just wanted to focus on Arrow, which many people in the community have already like given up on Arrow. But she's like, no, I want them to go and show videos like, hey, this is how we identified this object, you know, go through the 500 or 600 or whatever that they identified. Then she also wants them to show videos of the 170 or whatever that Arrow says they can't identify. And she wants to focus there. So we've known that for a while, but just this week, actually on the day of the House hearing, I had to cover the Senate too. And she told me now she wants to expand it to the Langley incursions. Yeah, some of y'all might have seen that Wall Street Journal article, which us at Askapol, we covered that months and months and months ago. But good job, Wall Street Journal, catching up with us at Askapol. But it seems like, as you were saying, something has changed in the water. And I don't know if it's that Wall Street Journal article or just members of Congress being more engaged on this topic. But yeah, it feels like there's a lot less eye rolls on Capitol Hill for the topic. I don't know how much honest engagement there is because a new administration's coming in. So like they have tax policy, they've got immigration, you know, there's all these other battles going on. And that's where it's interesting to see this one percolate to the top here at the end of this Congress.
I think having the Langley incursions will definitely make the hearing better. The issue with Arrow, and I know we've got a new director now, and I think Gillibrand, that's kind of her baby, isn't it? Wasn't Arrow kind of her baby? That's why she tended to defend Kirkpatrick and stuff. But I think the issue with Gillibrand that I have is just she was such a bold leader in the beginning of trying to get transparency, and then she just disappeared. And it seems like now she's starting to stick her head back up, and I appreciate it. But you know, the fact that she's connected to Arrow has people suspicious, and I give her a pass because I was one of the early ones that really believed in her.
Well, so I didn't even know this until I was like upstate New York. You know, I put more than 1,000 miles on the campaign trail here in the past month or whatever. And I saw a huge Gillibrand sign when I was covering more of the House races there. And I was like, and I looked it up and, oh, she was up for re-election this year. So, you know, she, Democratic state, she easily sailed to re-election. And like many people, New Yorkers didn't even know she was up for re-election. You know, same with Bernie Sanders. He just got re-elected. You know, that's part of the congressional industrial complex where the incumbents keep getting sent back. So part of me is curious if she got a little quiet on the issue pre-election.
Right.
Again, I've got nothing there. That's just a gut thing. But that said, and this is where I disagree with myself. So part of me says that.
That's good. That's
part
good.
Of me is like, but then part of me is like, wait, even though the community has felt let down by her, she's in the Senate. And like last year, I interviewed each 100 U.S. senators on the topic. And I think only 8 were really engaged, or 8 like knew about Grush and could be conversant with him about the topic. There's maybe another 10 or so knew about him, but wouldn't talk about him. Or maybe, no, 10's too much. Go back, look at askapol.com. Like, there were not many senators engaged. And it actually kind of, yeah, my takeaway was you have Senator Gillibrand, Democrat, then Senator Mike Rounds, Republican. Maybe Heinrich, Democrat from New Mexico, was a little bit engaged, but they all avoided Grush like the plague.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they had a briefing because, like you were saying, she, like Senator Rubio, came out hot and heavy after Grush dropped his claims about SAPs and these hidden special access programs. And we also got an exclusive with Rubio this week, and he's like, "Hey, I'm nominated to be Secretary of State. Not talking about it." I'm like, fair. If you're going to be Secretary of State, you may have other topics on the top of your agenda, but then I'm also like, wait, you're going to have people from other nations, from other legislatures across the globe who are going to maybe press you on this issue. So we'll see there.
What about like Radcliffe too? I mean, wasn't he a pro UAP? And then I forgot what post he got appointed to, but don't those things
DNI or is he CIA?
I don't think it was CIA. I was trying to remember what it was. I heard it, but I thought the position itself lent itself to actually helping us moving forward towards disclosure, which is a couple
CIA.
things I wanted to mention. I wanted to mention
Radcliffe is a CIA nominee.
Okay. So he is CIA. Well, that's going to be an interesting one because that's
right.
the one holding all the eggs in the basket. So that is interesting that he's one of them. I was going to get back to Gillibrand for a second. You mentioned that she's on the Intel committee and also the Armed Services committees. Wouldn't that imply that she probably knows more than probably just about any other senator, with the exclusion of those that are on the committees?
So yes and no. And this is where it's been interesting because, again, I've been here 18 years in Washington, so I know a lot of these lawmakers. And most of them, like Gillibrand, I covered her for WSKG, Binghamton, New York, upstate New York, her local NPR station. So, I know a lot of these senators from that local regional perspective. And so I can see through their bullshit most of the time. They're politicians and they're pretty fucking good at the bullshit. So I have to put myself in check often. But with her, or anyone on those committees, I don't know if most of them are ostriches and just don't want to engage on the topic. Some have point blank told me, Senator Rich, who is the former chair, Idaho Republican, but he was the chair of the Foreign Relations Committee. He told me, I don't read UFO stories. Okay. So what about that Chinese balloon that invaded U.S. airspace last year? Did you not read that? Because initially we didn't know what that was. Or if the Air Force didn't know what that was, then why the heck didn't they shoot it down or take care of it before it went over Montana, sensitive military sites, all the way to South Carolina? And so that's where you do have some proud ostriches like Senator Rich. But then you have others who are, and we've heard that lawmakers are hearing more about the issue from their constituents. So you have some who are aware of it, but they keep it a little distance because they don't want to get tainted with the X-Files feel. And I think that's what I'm really looking for in this Senate hearing. Gillibrand wants the entire focus of this hearing. Well, yeah, Arrow's going to be there as well, but now she wants, listen to our interview at Askapol. She's like, I want this focused on Langley.
Right.
The Langley incursions, which I first heard about from former Democratic vice presidential candidate Tim Kaine, because Langley Air Force Base is in Virginia. And it was the head, the head of the military, the generals from the head of Southcom and Northcom, and Kaine was pushing them on it in a public hearing saying, hey, we don't, and this is what caught my ear. He's like, we don't have the rules of engagement for what to do with these objects, whatever they are. Sometimes a lot of them say drones, but they don't know what they are. But Kane was like, we don't know the rules of engagement over suburban Air Force bases. And that perked my ears way up. Well, then a month later, I think it was the Pentagon chief, the top of the Pentagon top brass or whatever, the chair of the Joint Chiefs. He was testifying, and Senator Mark Kelly, the astronaut, who is one of the biggest UFO skeptics in Congress, he was pressing them hard on the regular incursions over Luke Air Force Base in Arizona. Well, so then I was like, wait, Kane was worried about what do we do with these objects over suburban areas? You're out in Arizona. Luke Air Force Base, that's a huge, huge flat of land. Like, you're not surrounded by a lot of people there. You picked that spot for a reason. Why haven't we shot down any of those?
Good point.
And so
That's a good point.
Kelly, even though Kelly wasn't talking about it as if it was a UFO or UAP, he was like, they're drones. But I'm like, wait, so and look at the interview. He's like convinced that it's, Chinese spies are basically, and he's like, they're using off-the-shelf technology, like going to Walmart, getting these drones. Well, I'm like, wait, if it's just an off-the-shelf drone from Walmart, I come from a family of hunters. Like, I've never pegged a pheasant because I'm not a good hunter. My dad would always clean up after me and get that bird. But wait, I can take out one of those drones just with give me a gun. And so that's where now having the attention on this, and I think for folks in the community to like relax a tad and like, because when I go up to senators, most of them, I'm not asking them about UFOs or ET. Right. I'm just like, anything extraterrestrial. I'm just like, hey, American airspace is being invaded by something you don't know. And so I start really simple, like from the ground up. And so now that these senators and lawmakers are finally being like, oh, we have to actually engage with our constituents, engage with the media on this issue. Like, y'all are 100% derelict of duty if you're all saying American airspace is regularly invaded by, if you think it's foreign actors, well, that's almost worse than if it's, someone from beyond Mars, or something from beyond Mars. And so that's where it's kind of interesting seeing them trip over their own illogic, for lack of a better term.
So do you think that that's the issue is, whether they have the right to shoot these things down? Because aren't we shooting down drones against the Houthis and other battle zones right now? Don't we have the technology to take drones down? And so, bro, have they tried? That would be my question.
Bro. Iran, what did they? They did a historic 200 drone attack on Israel, and the U.S. and Israel got every one of them motherfuckers. Yeah. I think 4 or 5 got through, but the technology is there. So granted, and I think Senator Kelly brought this up with us. America, we've always kind of had this natural insulation from some of these things because we're surrounded by a huge ocean and a huge ocean.
Right.
Passive Canadians up top, and then our weakened Mexican counterparts, in part because U.S. policy has really weakened them over the years, especially our drug policy. And so that's where America has been this kind of island. And so
insulated.
Now, yeah, but so now to have all these senators, and again, it was Senator Mike Rounds, Republican from South Dakota. He also has been bringing up this issue of these incursions. Like, wait, so now whether it's off-the-shelf technology, whether it's foreign adversaries, whether it's out-of-this-world technology, we now have U.S. airspace. Like, those oceans kind of don't exist anymore. this is 2024 and the technology has been advanced enough that, oh, we don't have that buffer that we thought we did. And so now seeing the military, seeing Congress recontemplate that, like literally Senator Kelly, he says, no, it's not UFOs. It's not extraterrestrial. He's 100% convinced it's an American adversary regularly in American airspace over sensitive military sites. Like,
Senator, without any
pause.
credible evidence to support that.
But that's where I'm like, wait, Senator, pause. Like, you're saying American airspace is regularly invaded by our foreign adversaries. Stop the presses. Like,
Right.
why am I covering Matt Gaetz being picked as AG? I should just be covering that,
Right. We've been
And
invaded.
so that's where they're kind of tripping over their own thoughts and rhetoric. And so that's where I'm just popping popcorn and I'm like, hey, keep the topic up, have more hearings, keep asking these questions. And that's going to alert more of their colleagues. Oh, we're allowed to ask these questions. Who knows what they're going to find at the end? And it's actually fascinating. Listen to our Gillibrand exclusive that we just dropped at askapol.com. Gillibrand's like kind of prepared for the executive branch to lie to Congress. She's ready for it. She put an amendment in last year's NDAA to kind of fish out any SAPs. The amendment was kind of said, like, if there's any of these special access programs that are funded by us, Congress, if they're funded by us, we need to know about them. And then asked her and Senator Rounds a few months after that passed, hey, so do you think it worked? And they were both like, no.
Yeah,
We're convinced. They said they're convinced that the executive branch is hiding programs from Congress.
Right.
So, like, just letting that sink in with other lawmakers. Yeah, they've been given a pass over the years, like this sci-fi pass,
the other
this
thing,
fiction pass. They don't get that anymore.
well, the other thing that they seem to be ignoring is that this has been going on for decades. This isn't a new phenomenon. Maybe the drone era is a new phenomenon, and maybe there are more drones in the air, but going to our sensitive sites, they've been doing it for a long time, and it's not drones.
That's the funniest thing. And so people who follow us at Askapol were like, wait, you just kept asking about drones when you were interviewing Senator Kelly. I'm like, hey, I'm going to use whatever language my sources are using.
Mm-hmm.
If they call it a drone, but they don't know what it is, then guess what? That's a UAP. Like,
they don't know it, but that's another word for UAP now.
Well, here, let me read this quote exactly from Gillibrand. We don't know it. It's not off the shelf stuff. She's saying, we do not know what is above American airspace. And the fact, so here's the full quote. We don't know whose they are. We don't know what propulsion they use. We don't know the tech. We don't know it. It's not off the shelf stuff.
Right.
And that's a member of the Senate Intel and Armed Services Committee. That's Gillibrand, who's chairing the hearing next week.
And it shoots Kelly down, doesn't it?
And like, they don't know what it is. So cool. You don't know what it is. Call it a drone. Call it a dog. I'm going to use your terms because you changed the definition from UFO to UAP. So I'm going to keep using UAP, but I'm happy to call it a drone. But what the F is it? And why aren't you shooting it down if you think it's an adversary?
Yeah. It's just crazy that they get hung up on the word, because the word itself just means unidentified, and I don't know why that's such an issue. Many of us believe we know what some of them are, but that word itself does not mean UFOs or extraterrestrial in and of itself.
But that's how government and the bureaucracy kind of works. And I don't think it's people in a dark room plotting. I think it's a lot of ineptitude, if anything. Deep state. I'm like, you don't have deep minds. It can't be like that deep. But so, like with this, I kind of liken it to my view on the abortion debate these days. I'm like, hey, we need new definitions because the term abortion has become so broad that, when my sister-in-law had to have a miscarriage and then that fetus had to get out of her body, that's not that's not an abortion.
Right.
But that's an abortion according to government language and all that. And so I think, especially with this topic, we need to really push lawmakers to be precise. And what I found is they can't. There's like, it's a drone. But that's where Gillibrand astounded me, like listening back to it. She's like, no, we don't know what they are. Cool. Call it a drone, but that's a UAP.
Testy gave us the name here. One of the guys, one of my friends watching the podcast. Let's just call them seagulls. Let's just call them seagulls.
Amen.
Anyway, let's move on.
Seagulls. Dude, I walked through a huge, on the way to the Capitol yesterday, there was like 30, 40 pigeons. Wow. And man, I thought they wanted to attack me. So those might have been some CIA pigeons.
They
so
probably
you call them
were.
Seagulls. I'm calling them pigeons.
Yeah. They were the attack pigeons. They were coming after you. All right. So let's get back to the hearing on Wednesday. Let me just get your impression of it. And, what do you think about the hearing itself? We'll get to the witnesses in a minute, but just the hearing itself. Was it what you expected? Was it what you were hoping for, or were you disappointed?
I've got no expectations. Like, my expectations for Congress is you are going to disappoint me. The U.S. government, you are going to fail me. Even like the most basic thing, like, oh, we still have lead pipes, etc. So like, I come at everything with politics from a very wry angle, but like talking to, so first words out of Chair Nancy Mace's mouth when I saw her in the hall and she was leaving the hearing, she goes, I've never been in a hearing ever where there was a standing ovation.
Oh, wow. I knew there was more energy.
Even though the dais was empty for much of the hearing, the dais where the lawmakers are, I think initially I counted just 11 lawmakers in there, but then there might have been it might have gone up to 15 by my rough count of lawmakers, because they're in other hearings and they pop in and out.
Ogles had to run back.
Yeah. And like, I was actually walking with Ogles on his way back in and, or kind of running with him in the hall. And I was like,
so hey, you were why he was late then.
Well, he was like, I was like, what do you think of the hearing? He's like, I don't know. I haven't been there. And so that's kind of telling this is how Congress works.
Right.
Ogles, he'll have a staffer who was covering that and going to send him notes later, and actually probably gave him questions with the notes that they took on the hearing before that. But he didn't digest that whole 2-hour hearing because he had another engagement. And so that's where, so Chair Nancy Mace, the chair is not really allowed to leave. They can, but like, so she was there the whole time. She just left there so energized, just saying, wow, there was a standing ovation. She's like, that alone just stands out. Like, you don't get that. And I think, especially knowing that these are classified subjects and that these whistleblowers are risking a lot by talking, whether it's eye rolls from
I want to get to that.
And colleagues.
That's the next thing I'm going to get to and stuff. So if you don't mind, let me, to bear with me for a minute. And I want to go ahead and mention some things, because Mace was very quick to talk about the intimidation factor. She was very quick to talk about there were people, outside forces is how she put it, that didn't want the hearing to go. And then Moskowitz was the one who mentioned that they were told not to ask certain witnesses certain questions. And I'll get to that in a minute. And then finally, the third one was Boebert saying that she was told that by being involved with the hearing, that she was going to be put on a list. And so those are all clearly intimidation factors. And so let me ask you this question. When Representative Mace said that it was outside forces, are we talking about outside of Congress, or are we talking about outside of her committee? We're talking about Republicans that many people suspect, they stopped the NDA, or at least the full version of it last year. They managed to somehow stop the first attempt at it this year until it was revived. So what's your take on that? Do you think it's an inside job, or truly an outside of Congress pressure from the CIA or some other part of the federal government?
Welcome to my world and the mystery I live in. Because since last year's NDAA, since the 2023 NDAA, where Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's own UAPDA, UAP Disclosure Act, when the Senate Majority Leader has his own amendment gutted behind closed doors, I've been searching at Ask a Poll. We've been searching since then, like at least once a week or once every 2 weeks. We're asking a different lawmaker who's on armed services or intel, hey, do you know who gutted Senate Majority Leader Schumer's amendment on UAPs? We have not found anyone who knows who it is. And with people who we trust, with people who I trust, and with people so some of the chairs and some of the ranking members of some of these powerful committees, I text with them. I've covered them for their local NPR stations, so I've gained their trust, a decade ago. And now I'm the thorn in their side. They're like, damn it, he's got my cell and he's covering this issue. But so there are people I trust and who trust me. You don't give your cell out to every dipshit reporter in this town. And so that's where even press, he has to be way background. But the chairs of one of these committees was like, I didn't have anything to do with this. He goes, I don't want anything to do with this topic because I got primaried by someone from the, UFO community. He's like, no, I don't even want to touch this topic. So then I'm like, okay, you're the chair of that powerful committee that is one of the few with a seat at the table on this issue. So if you don't care about it, and then the ranking member, who I also know probably better, they tell me that they don't give a shit about it, then I'm like, okay, are you so disengaged that you're empowering one of your staffers? Like maybe your chief of staff is the point person on this issue. Maybe it's, the head of maybe it's the head of Raytheon who's got a facility in your district, or Northrop Grumman, all these, and so that's where it's interesting seeing Congress come up with more and more questions. Lawmakers like Mace told us, she's got more pointed questions now coming out of that hearing for the Pentagon, military contractors, and then also I think Department of Energy. And so lawmakers, I think, are first, because again, these issues haven't come up for decades. So lawmakers and their staffs are kind of learning how to even press on the issue. And we've had one, I think it was Moskowitz or maybe Burleson, complained to us that part of their frustration after the David Grush hearing last summer was that they had these skiff briefings, and in the first skiff briefing, so in the second skiff briefing, where it's classified, they had answers to the questions that they asked point blank in the first one, and they kind of realized, oh, we asked it wrong. They had the information we were looking for. They just, because we didn't delicately dance verbally, they skirted it. But then the next one, and I think that's where, because that next one you had 10 more lawmakers including AOC and some other ones, come there because the frustration had grown. So part of me is curious if the tactics that the executive branch or whatever has used for years are kind of backfiring now, and you're getting lawmakers more inquisitive the more they try to like wiggle out of this stuff. Because a lot of lawmakers, again, are just like, hey, what's that?
Yeah.
They're just like, they come at it very simplistically. Hey, what's that? And when you ask, what's that? And you saw that, and one of your constituents sent you their video, and then, another constituent from the other side of the county sent you their video. Oh, wait. The government, the U.S. Air Force, doesn't know what that is? Mm-hmm. Sorry, you can't just close that door. Now there's more questions. And so, yeah, I think this new tech era, we'll see. There's a lot of big issues that are going to be on Congress's radar at the start of this new year. But it's also going to be such a hyper-partisan just brawl that this nonpartisan issue, I think, might be that rare respite that lawmakers kind of get more engaged on the issue just because they don't have to yell and fight with
it's not a brawl
person across the aisle. They can just ask the same bewildered questions together.
Wouldn't it be cool if this was the very issue that healed Congress, that healed it? I did have a quick question that came up, and I want to go ahead and put it up there. And we just have to step back, and then we're going to come right back where we are. But Steve seemed to think yesterday that the hearing is going to be, he mentioned a date. Now, I hadn't seen that anywhere. He said something about December 19th. Is that accurate?
Yep. December 19th. I'm looking it up to triple check myself. But yep, Tuesday, the 19th.
Yep. All right.
I
trust Steve. I didn't mean that, but I hadn't heard the date.
But and so actually, I caused a little confusion. Not my fault. But on Wednesday, when the House hearing was going on, again, like they were doing the leadership election on the Senate side to replace Mitch McConnell as the Senate Republican leader. Now it's John Thune, who we have an exclusive with that we dropped last year. Because again, we interviewed all 100 senators, and we're going to keep doing that with a new class. And so if you guys are wondering where your lawmaker stands on any of these topics, we've already asked them for you. And send us at Askapol, send us your follow-up questions after you listen to the pretty bad, like half the senators. So Senator Thune, so half the senators learned about David Grush for the first time from us, from me asking. Thune knew about it. And so he didn't have much to say, but he knew about it. He's a top Republican leader. He was the Senate Republican whip before he's becoming Senate Republican leader. But he knew about Grush. He just didn't want to talk about him. And so that's where I'm like,
keying on him.
Yeah, 5-dimensional chess there. And so when we were talking with Gillibrand, because I'm waiting outside there, and Vice President-elect Vance, J.D. Vance, was inside there. So you had Secret Service, you had the hallway shut down, you had 1,000 cameras over here. It was just a shit show. In the midst of that shit show, where I'm literally in this ear, I'm listening to the House hearing, I see Senator Gillibrand. My first time seeing her since their October recess or since the election. So I'm like, hey, how are you? Chat for a second. And then I go, so I'm listening to this UAP hearing in the House. Are you listening to it all? She goes, no. And listen to it. It's on our site. She's like, what are they saying? She wanted all the intel. She got real excited. And in like a genuine way. And so then I lost my train of thought there a little bit. But that's where with Gillibrand, keep an eye
Talking
on
about the
her.
hearing coming up.
Well, yeah. And so, so she messed up. And again, all this stuff is happening. She told me Wednesday that it was going to be a December hearing.
Right.
So tweeted that out, sent it to our folks at Askapol first, and then sent a link to that. So we broke that news. Well, then her staff put out, or first her staff informed her, actually, ma'am, it's November. And actually, ma'am, it's next week. So like they published, I think Dean got it first, but they published the that there's going to be the hearing. And it's interesting, the way it was published and the way Dean properly reported it is that it says closed hearing and then open at the end. When me and her staffer, because then yesterday I did a follow-up with her just being like, hey, did you misspeak? Or is there going to be 2 hearings? You know, because we saw the November 19th one. And then I was like, wait, but you said December. And like, she was running up to me being like, hey, my staff told me I told you wrong, you know? And so, yep, there's not going to be 2 Senate UAP hearings this year. Just going to be that one. But yeah, just so you all know, these lawmakers do feel like when you all talk, her staff said, hey, ma'am, you misspoke. That's because they heard you all. And sorry for the confusion, but
that's not a big deal.
That's why you should ask a poll with a grain of salt. Because again,
Well,
I interview 535 lawmakers for a living. So I'm not looking for answers or truth from any of them.
Well, you can only report
for pieces of the puzzle.
Right. But you can only report what's told to you. And so it's not on you if they give you something wrong, you know, and you trust the person. And, you know, and she didn't do it intentionally. It's just, like I said, she's finding out stuff from her own staffers because they're organizing a lot of this. The second question I wanted to bring, like I said, I'd bring us back is when Moskowitz was told that, you know, not to ask certain questions, certain witnesses, you know, my initial thought was Lue. Because Lue, you know, he worked with all the SAPs and, you know, his clearance was as high as you could get, you know, for a government employee. But when I talked to Steve, he actually said something that made sense. And I'll ask you this question as soon as I finish this, is he had mentioned that it had to do with the Immaculate Constellation document, that's what they were concerned about. What are you hearing?
So actually, I'm taking notes and stay tuned because I'm going to ask these questions next week. Like I interviewed Moskowitz after the hearing, but I asked him more about his, like, remember I'm a reporter. And so his like Fight Club exchange, when he was awesome. Like, wait, yeah, when he was like, wait, later. So you can't talk about, like, just like you can't talk about Fight Club. You can't talk about Fight Club because there is a Fight Club.
I got a way of spinning it. I spun it around where it maybe makes a little more sense. I think everybody understood what he was saying, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So right now we don't know. Steve made a lot of sense though, because that's kind of the hot thing going on. It's the breaking news of the day. That was the document that they put in the record, but I also thought that, you know, some of the answers that Lue gave were very, very compelling. And I thought just the fact that he acknowledged them, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, I thought that Lue could have also, so maybe it's the word witnesses wasn't, you know, a ploy to hide which witness, but maybe it actually meant multiple witnesses.
Well, yeah. So this is where I need to like talk to a few more folks or whatever, but like, so here, one of the co-chairs, we haven't dropped this yet, but it's going to come out hopefully tomorrow, except I might be sick tomorrow.
You've been sick for a while. I feel bad for you.
I'm sick right now.
Yeah, I feel bad for you.
No, if I get good drugs, I'm going to keep going. If I don't get them, then I'm going to be sick tomorrow.
Yeah.
God bless you, Robitussin. But so Congresswoman Luna leaving the hearing, she was pretty frustrated. She was like, what was all this? They can't answer it. She's like, I get that, but you gave us the document. Like, if the document's there and now public, why can't you talk about that? So, like, that's her frustration.
The document was a summary. It was not a Pentagon document. That's the key right there. Because he would have went to jail if it had been an actual document. They would be hung for it.
And let's restate that. Because all of us who are engaged in this issue. We want all the answers. We want everything. And even like last night, someone was complaining about like, oh, the audio quality at Askapol. And I'm like, and they're like, you need to bring your big, long, omnidirectional microphone with you. I was like, so your advice to me is to bring a huge microphone in that whole rig to talk to lawmakers and try to get them to be honest with me about classified information?
Yeah.
Nope.
You probably pick up too many voices to the one you want.
Hey, the way I roll, and lawmakers know it, but I got a small little mic. I got my DJI
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Now, what about?
And so that's where I get it, but we'll see. Because having Luna, like feeling that frustration from her, and this is where like, none of these members of the UAP caucus or the people in that hearing room are like, none of them are monolithic on this issue. Like Nancy Mace, who chaired the hearing, she comes at this issue purely, or initially at least, purely from like the military contracting angle, thinking like, oh, it's hidden there. Well, coming out of yesterday's hearing, she's like, well, could be hidden in the Pentagon, could be hidden in China. I think I hiccuped on that third one earlier, but yeah, she's like, maybe it is China or whatever. But initially, but she keeps the door open for the military industrial complex. And after yesterday's hearing, she's like, yep, that's still one of my top 3 that I want to sniff around on. And so, again, lawmakers are kind of learning as they go. And with Republicans retaining control of the House next year and with such slim majorities, I don't think so. A lot of lawmakers leaving that hearing were saying, you know, Moskowitz, Luna, Mace, yeah, they want the select UAP committee, but they don't think it's dire. So 6 months ago, most of these lawmakers were like, hey, if we don't have a select UAP committee, we're never going to get the answers. They're not saying that as overtly these days. And I think that's because leadership of both parties kind of gets that, oh, this isn't an issue that's just over there, that this is an issue that has broad bipartisan support. It's not support, questions. And so that's where even the dynamics yesterday or a couple days ago of Nancy Mace chairing the hearing, when the guy who chaired the last hearing, Glenn Groffman from Wisconsin, like, guys, I've got like a handful of interviews with Groffman where he doesn't know shit.
That's what I was going to say. I'm telling you, Matt, he couldn't pronounce Tic Tac right. He couldn't pronounce Lue Elizondo's last name. I was like, man, this guy is either just a sloth or he is on the other side.
Well, so it could be both. Could be all 3, whatever the third is. Yeah, maybe he's a drone. But it was, for one, interesting for me to see him there. But I kind of viewed him a little bit more. Because remember, Nancy Mace, like Burchett, Luna was out having her beautiful, cute baby. So she couldn't vote against Speaker McCarthy. But 2 of the 8 folks who ousted Speaker McCarthy last year in a historic fashion, like, they didn't just shut down the government, they shut down Congress for 3 weeks. And many Republicans, and that's why a lot of Republicans are never going to support Gates, because they hate that son of a bitch. And yeah, I can say that because that's what he thinks about himself, because he's a piece of shit and he knows it. Yeah, Gates, text me back next time I text you.
You got his attention now.
No, he loved me for my drug policy coverage, and he probably loves me for my UAP coverage. But no, man, that guy's afraid of his own shadow for good reasons. But that's where this issue kind of cuts across all those party lines and like the traditional Washington BS. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Okay. Well, the third.
You can ask me anything about Matt Gaetz, and I'll tell you.
You're loaded for bear on that one, aren't you? Well, let me ask you about. We got a couple more things.
Wait, pardon me. So to end that thought, right now, because the margins are going to be so small, these members, they might be able to ask Speaker Johnson, like, "Hey, give us that select committee." And so we'll see what happens in the next. Well, and this hasn't been reported broadly, because Speaker Johnson was just reelected this week in a closed door meeting with only Republicans, that, the one that Trump came and spoke to on Wednesday morning, which I was outside of before I ran over to the House to go to the UAP hearing, before running back to the Senate to cover the Thune and Republican leadership election. This has been a busy week. But so that's where one of those Republican members, and I think right now Republicans only have 3 or 4 vote margin in the House.
It gives them more leverage. So that's a cool thing.
Well, 1 and then 2 of those members have confirmed to me that Johnson doesn't have their support. And so, and that's not UAP caucus members. That's other Republicans. And so that makes the support of those UAP caucus Republicans, who have been that thorn in the side of Republican leaders who just want to do business as usual, that has their attention. And so I'm curious, like, I don't think party leaders in either party would want a select committee, because that would keep perpetual attention on the issue. But I think that will only be answered by the incoming White House, because if there's a select committee on this topic, that's going to be a perpetual thorn in the side of the administration, because right now it's a Democrat in the White House, but it's going to be a Republican in the White House. No one thinks the president of any recent president has really been pulling the levers on this. It's
right. There's somebody pulling it, but we don't know who it is.
Yeah, it's underneath there. And so that's where, even though Trump is kind of, at the end of the campaign, Trump was like giving out promises to everyone. Like, yeah, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car. And so we'll see whether he actually opens up stuff. Right. But I think the more we have these members of Congress pushing for that, I think we might even see something where instead of a select UAP committee, lawmakers might get a dump load, and it'll probably be classified, but they might get just a shit ton of information that they've been asking for years that might just be dumped on them. Like, I could see Congress just getting a warehouse of information, but them saying, no, it's classified. You can read it, but you can't talk about it.
Right.
And that, I think, would be the ultimate, like, FU.
Yeah, it would be tough.
Because then you are answering these lawmakers' questions who are very engaged, but then kind of muting them in the same time.
Well, the other one that I had, and then I want to go in, I want to keep the idea of this threat and intimidation narrative going on. And I'm not sure that this is one you can answer either, but Boebert talked about a list. You have any idea what that, like, being blacklisted or intimidation list? What in the world does this list mean?
Hey, I've got the same exact question. Hey, Miss Boebert, what in the world does that list mean?
I gave you some questions to take back with you, at least. The other one I wanted to go.
But on that, that really stuck out to me, and I'm curious. So you have no idea what she was talking about there, because I had no idea, and I was curious where that came from, because ahead of the first hearing, there was just like regular congressional dipshittery, and that dipshittery can be like power plays. But because Burchett and Luna were, I think Burchett's was a second-term lawmaker, maybe third term, and then Luna was first term. They're the co-chairs of the UAP caucus. Like, going into that first hearing, they felt like they were going to be leading it. They were going to have the gavels. But then, no, like, in no universe would a first-term lawmaker get a gavel. So, like, that's where Grothman led that first hearing. But part of the dominoes that ingloriously fell when, you know, Burchett had his feelings hurt the night before, just because he only learned the night before that hearing that he wasn't going to be chairing it. So I don't know if that, and pardon my French, I don't know if that fuckery came from the executive branch, whether folks there were trying to like take away their power, or whether there was just miscommunication in a very dysfunctional Congress. Again, that Congress historically shut themselves down for 3 weeks where they couldn't do anything.
Right.
Like the doors of the House floor were sealed shut, basically, because there was no Congress for 3 weeks last year. Again, because of Gates, Burchett, Luna to a degree. And
Is
so,
that the Freedom Caucus? Is that what it was, or was it a different name?
one more time.
Was it called the Freedom Caucus, or was it a different name for it?
Freedom Caucus, like, yeah, Burchett and Luna are Freedom Caucus. Gates has never been a member of the Freedom Caucus, even though
I'm not trying to
freedom
put anybody anything. I'm just trying to get in from. There was some kind of alliance within these individual representatives. I was trying to figure out what it was.
Well, no, and that's where, well, no, I mean, so all of them, like, broadly, they're united on this issue, which is wild, because, like, I could see Moskowitz and Boebert getting in a fucking back alley, like, knife fight with each other.
She's kind of scary,
Moskowitz,
wasn't she?
I know. I think Moskowitz would be dead. It's like, sorry, bro. Like, Boebert, I ain't messing with her. You know she's packing.
Yeah.
But so that's where, again, because, and I think Moskowitz, he's going to go into his second term, but I think he's a freshman lawmaker as well. Like, they were all like learning the ropes. Same with Congressman Garcia, another Democrat who's on the UAP caucus. And so, I mean, everyone, take a step back, which I kind of just am, because I just thought of this. Like, guys, most of the people in the UAP caucus, this was their first Congress, and they got 2 public UFO hearings. Let's just see what happens next. And so, like, I know, like, the whole year people have been itching for more and more and more. As I always remind people, Democrats, they really, really care about universal health care. They want universal health care. They pushed it for 100 years. And under President Obama, they pushed it so hard.
They broke it.
No, they fell short. They didn't get universal health care. They got Obamacare.
Right.
And that's the thing that they cared about most. And they had 60 votes in the Senate. And so that's where good or best intentions, whatever, going into something, what comes out on the other end is kind of democracy. Because you got 535 motherfuckers from, you know, different regions, different states. And again, with these younger members, they learned a lot this year. And I was actually expecting to see some of the UAP caucus members, you know, get ousted, but I'm pretty sure each one of them is coming back. And so that only means, you know, love or hate their politics over here or there on this issue. They're coming back more fortified and more sharpened.
That's a good thing for us, like I said, regardless of whether you believe in their politics or not. We're talking about the threat narrative. Lue also laid out the threat to whistleblowers, and he talked about the threat to career. That's the first thing they leverage against you. The second thing is your security clearance. And then the third one is your life, and literally threatening lives. And let me put this up on stage. One thing happened, Lue has had death threats before, and I think this is about a year ago. I'm roughly in that ballpark, but Lue's had death threats before, but this was the first time that he felt like he needed to do something about it, like Bob Lazar going out and, getting on TV to try to protect himself. But this is what he said. He said, to add insult to injury, I was notified yesterday that there may be a personal threat against myself and several other whistleblowers formerly associated with the UAP effort for the United States government. As such, I would like to make this perfectly clear to the American people. I am not prone to accidents. I am not suicidal. I am not abusing drugs. I am not engaged in any illicit activities. If something happens to me or my family members in the future, you will know what happened. And so I thought,
dude,
that
just
spelled it out pretty big.
To you, Lou. No,
Yeah,
but like just.
But it was so credible that he had to speak on it, and that's what we're seeing. People are being pushed. They're being pushed at different levels. I think Congress, you're not going to threaten their lives probably as much as you're going to, you're going to threaten them in other ways. And so it's frustrating to me to see that I guess it tells us that there is definitely 100% something there, or they wouldn't be pushing so hard for it.
Well, dude, we saw it with the fucking, pardon my French, but the Grush bullshit, where they tried to bring up your PTSD from serving America.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, PTSD is a real fucking problem.
It is.
And like the number, even though it's wrong, but like the 21 veteran suicides a day,
right.
The number seems to be wrong, but it's not that wrong. There's probably 15 to 18 veterans killing themselves a day in this country because of the sacrifices they gave to us, for us to have the lavish freedom of whether to vote for this dipshit or that dipshit. Like, God bless America. But so that's where so I was always dubious and skeptical of stuff like that. And I'm not, I trust Lou. I'm curious what he heard, where he got that.
Well,
maybe that's because I'm an old school.
I'll give you this, Matt. I got an idea of where it came from and how it was found, and I absolutely trust that person 100%. And so I think this was a legitimate threat, and it wasn't any kind of game. It wasn't just like he got afraid. This was something literally that if he didn't get out in front of it, it could end up his death, David's death, because you have to know who one of the other whistleblowers is. Yeah. It's David Grush. And let me tell you something, and think about this. David Grush did not go to, I can't remember if it was Assault or Soul Conference, but he was supposed to be a speaker and he wasn't. And you got to, at least as far as I know, I don't see David Grush around much. I don't see him out in the public, and I really think that it dates back to that right there. That that this threat was real, it was credible, and so people are keeping their heads down to make sure that they don't get shot in the back of the head twice. And
this. Oh no, brother! It's going to be a heart attack.
Oh yeah, you're right. Give him a
right
or suicide.
No, this is where I might be Pollyannish, but at least initially I was. Well, because what? I'm like, wait, CIA, blah, blah, blah. Like, they're not going around just like capping people.
It may not be the CIA, though, Matt.
I know. And that's.
It may be a contractor, because we have some pretty corrupt contractors out there. And so it's always possible that they're the ones who want this shut down.
Well, no. And so what I would say to them and every other whistleblower, make sure it's known. Keep it classified, but share what you know with these members of Congress,
right,
Senate, and House, because what we've heard, because Arrow has been in such disarray, or because it never materialized and became what lawmakers wanted it to be, the big complaint we've heard about Arrow. Yeah, you, Sean fucking Patrick, you're a failure. That's what senators of both parties tell me.
Exactly.
That you're a failure. So
he was a big loser.
Well, but literally under his tenure, you had all these whistleblowers knocking on the doors of Republican and Democratic senators alike saying, hey, we have information to share on this topic. We just don't trust Arrow. And so that's where at the end of last year, you had Gillibrand meet privately with Kirkpatrick saying, hey, this is a problem. Then you had Senator Mike Rounds meet privately with Kirkpatrick and say, hey, we need to change Arrow so that whistleblowers trust you, because that's why we created you. Well, then we also broke this news at Ask a Poll. You had the chair and the vice chair of the Senate Intel Committee, one who's now nominated to be Secretary of State, so it's Mark Warner, and then Marco Rubio. They met privately with Kirkpatrick last year, even though they don't really give a shit about this issue, or at least Warner doesn't, but they met with him to be like, hey, whistleblowers don't trust this agency. And as Rubio, look up the interview on askapol.com. I think it's from this spring, maybe late spring, May or whatever. But Rubio's so frustrated talking to me because he's like, you're asking me questions. He's like, I'm so busy. He's like, I thought we outsourced this to Arrow. So literally, you kind of got this glimpse of Rubio and other lawmakers thinking. They're like, we set up Arrow to be our brain trust, to do the thinking on this issue, to do the vetting for us. And I think that's because they heard so much, or there was so much pressure from the public, et cetera. So lawmakers didn't initially take it serious enough, but they heard the message and they took it serious enough to create Arrow. And so like, they just wanted to get rid of the problem. And they're like, fuck you, Kirkpatrick. You're not even letting us, pass the problem on to you. Because the whistleblowers are now coming out in droves to us.
instead of Arrow. And you want to know why is because of people like Mario Woods, who's a friend of mine. He couldn't actually go in person, but he did an interview on the phone. I've seen the invitation to Arrow. He told him everything that happened. And then Kirkpatrick gets up there and basically says, oh, there's no evidence of extraterrestrials. And I don't know how you explain what he went through with this huge gaseous red ball over one of our Minuteman missile silos. And it's like it's setting alarms off. And it's just absolutely, it was disrespectful. And that's the reason why whistleblowers will not go to Arrow right now. And I don't know if it's going to change with leadership. They're going to have to prove themselves.
Oh, 1,000%. And I think Congress is kind of waking up to that, because even a couple weeks back or maybe a month, pardon me, I don't even know what day, month, or year it is.
We'll give you a pass. You've been sick.
But it was a few months back that Gillibrand, oh yeah, because I was asking all these senators, hey, have you met with Kirkpatrick's replacement? And none of them had. None of them really knew anything about him. And so in that interim, it felt like lawmakers were getting feedback, or just getting the sense of it that, hey, we don't just need a new figurehead at this organization. Like, we need you to have a mandate from us, Congress, speaking for them, even though I'm not a member of Congress and no one would ever want me to be. But they were like, hey, dude. And I think the thinking was, all right, can we structurally change this? Let me put it this way. Is Congress the brain of Arrow, or is DOD the brain and the spine of Arrow?
Exactly.
And whoever they're getting their commands from, and like I learned this week from Chair Mace. I didn't know that Arrow's budget was secret.
Yeah, I want to tell you how much money
Mace and them, they say they can see that budget privately they can't talk about it publicly because it's classified. And like we were saying earlier, they can literally get sent to jail if they discuss that. But from the feeling is none of these fiscal hawks are coming out of the skiff being like, oh my God, we're paying Arrow $1 trillion a year. We're paying them $1 billion a year. We got to cut their budget. No, the fiscal hawks who literally ousted McCarthy for overspending and cutting deals with Democrats, the fiscal hawks in the UAP caucus are like, wait, why don't you give a shit about Arrow? Why don't they have a budget? You know?
And maybe it's not a big budget, and that's the problem.
This
Yeah.
would be something we wouldn't even have to speculate about if they were just honest with us.
Right, exactly.
But they're not, so we can speculate away.
Well, it's just over classification. When you classify something that it absolutely makes no sense to classify, like why would they need to classify the budget now? I mean, that makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, so I'll disagree with you. Again, this is Professor Laslo. I think, oh, wait. So here, we have a great exclusive that's about to drop with Congressman Timmons from South Carolina, I believe. First time I interviewed him, I might have interviewed him once before, but first time I really interviewed him was yesterday. I was just getting back from the Senate covering the Thune election, and I'm listening to Timmons in my ear, and I see this congressman and an aide walking down the hall, but like two like long halls away from where the oversight hearing was on UAPs. But I was like, hey, I think, because there's a delay, and I was like, sir, I think I'm listening to your questions in my ear right now. And I proceeded to walk with him for a while. Great interview. He's former Air Force. He was a pilot. When I asked him about SAPs and like, hey, what do you think about, you know, the executive branch hiding stuff from Congress? He was like, I love it. He's like, do you know my colleagues? Basically, he's like, do you know my colleague is Matt Gaetz and a bunch of other dipshits like him? So he was like, no,
they don't need
military. But he's like, I got buddies who are military. He's like, no, things need to be hidden from Congress. And he didn't say this Congress, but he kind of meant it. But that's every Congress over the years and generations. Like, no, the way the framers gave us Congress is they wanted 535 people who look like us. And sorry, y'all, we're a lot of dipshits. Or a lot of us yap a lot.
That's so Bigelow's argument.
Yeah, well, and so that was interesting hearing Timmons, like, while he's 1,000%, he's got questions, he wants answers, he wants disclosure. He's also like, but disclosure stops at a certain point. At a certain point, his argument is that the government needs to have secrets, not necessarily from the American people, but if the American people know, oh, then our adversaries are going to know. And
most of us believe that, Matt. Most of us support the idea that there's certain things that we're never going to know and we don't need to know, because if we knew, then our enemies would know. But, you know, just the basic announcement that we're not alone, I don't see where that is a national security issue, you know, and that's what we're fighting for. We don't want to destroy, you know, our country in the process. We want to do it right. That's why we're doing it the way we're doing it, you know. I did want to go on a little bit though, since we're talking about manipulate, unless you had something finished there.
No.
Okay. Since we're talking about manipulation and threats, I don't know when you were listening at Mr. Grothman, but when he asked Admiral Gallaudet, which I thought was cool to have an admiral there, because I'm telling you what, I was in the Navy. When an admiral came on your ship, I mean, everybody noticed. And so that's a high-ranking officer. But
hey, he asked, thank you for your service. And thank you for your service, Mr. Gallaudet.
Yeah. Anyway, he told us, he was asked by Mr. Grothman if he could elaborate on the retaliation against whistleblowers. And Mr. Gallaudet gets up there and he talks about his own experience. And I believe he said it was Arrow who did this. They tried to, he called it like psychological campaign on him. And it was like they were trying to convince him that the Tic Tac was U.S. tech. And then the second thing they tried to get him to believe is that the whistleblowers were liars. And he's the one who actually used that. And that kind of leads up to something else I want to say. Like, write down whatever you need to write down. But to me, it sounds like there's a psychological warfare, at least some degree, on the American public. And I'm going to elaborate on that. During Lue's 5 minutes that he spoke, he talked about, he mentioned a small cadre in our government has used suppression and intimidation, which we have experienced. And then Lue goes on and he named it. It's a part of the Pentagon Public Affairs Office. It's called a professional psychological officer. And he talked about how this professional psychological officer served as a single point of contact for any UAP questions. And so the one thing that Lue did not do, Matt, is he did not identify who this officer was. But when he said it, I was pretty confident. Yeah, Diaz already got it there. I was pretty confident. But John Greenwald, he kind of let the cat out of the bag, even though most of us knew it. He says, Mr. Lue Elizondo made references to a professional psychological operations officer employed by the Pentagon that serves at the singular point of contact for any UAP-related inquiries from citizens and the media. And then he says right here, he is referring to Pentagon spokesperson Susan Go. And here is her paper that shows that she was authored The Evolution of Strategic Influence, written while she was serving as a lieutenant colonel in the Army. Let me show you right here. This is the smoking gun. It's right there, Matt. And so I think it's pretty cool that John Greenwald has finally figured out that, he was getting a snow job. And, he seems to have, he's starting to understand that he's been lied to. And he's finally, to me, my opinion of it, he's finally come to the right side. And so he brings this up. And so now we know it's Susan Go. And
I don't know if you can see it, but looking back at me here,
yeah,
the stack of books.
We talking
I'm doing a
psychological
study.
warfare?
I'm doing a study right now on propaganda.
Oh, wow. This is exactly where we're at.
Professor Laslo. So literally,
I've got you get to share that with us.
Stack of books
Uh-huh.
on propaganda and that, and for good reason.
No matter what you're
But
talking about, exactly. To me, though, Matt,
I'm looking up that paper right when I get off with you, because again, I missed parts of the hearing. I need to rewatch it. That's so fascinating. Because kind of like I was saying before with that, like maybe terrible metaphor or whatever, but with abortion where I'm like, they just need to redefine it.
right?
I'm like,
So generic that it means everything.
yeah, it's become everything,
miscarriages.
but I'm like, no, IVF is not abortion, and now,
Right.
and
Exactly.
so that's where, because we've got such a bad Congress, and because we have had such a bad Congress for decades, they've enabled the US government to be really fucking bad. That's not all my friends and like the great public servants. My nephew just became a Marine a week ago. Like, fucking love you all. Like, you all on the ground are doing it right. But somewhere in that bureaucracy, everything gets effed up. Where Republican presidents, are disappointed and can't get what they promised the American people out of what they control. Same thing with Democratic presidents. Like, yes. And this is where part of me is like a little excited about Trump and them coming in, like shaking everything up. Because I'm like, fuck yeah, shake it all up, like turn it upside down, because it seems like no one's really happy except for those few people, and it seems this lady's one of them, who are those puppet masters. And then remember I was telling you, because some of those chairs and ranking members have written off this issue so much that I'm curious who on their staff, like whether their staff is pulling the strings, and like gutting Schumer's UAP DA amendment last year. That could have been someone like her, you know, because if they're the all-knowing being, hey, sir, I'll take care of that issue for you. Don't worry, I got it. You know, and then
I was going to tell you, you don't have to look. You don't have to look for that paper. Dia Dragon, another friend of mine, he DM'd it to you. Nice. That paper you were asking about.
Oh, hey, love you.
Yeah, Dragon. That you some work there, especially since you're sick and stuff like that. Let's, if you're done, let's go ahead and talk about the witness. I know you're sick, so I'm kind of get through the last few things.
Hey, I'm having fun. This is good.
Oh, good. That's what I say. Every time I have a podcast with you, it's so relaxing, and I can't explain it. I have a kinship with you. We laugh, we have fun. It's just such a relaxed podcast, and I enjoy that.
We've never met in person, right?
Not yet. We will someday.
But I do feel like I know you. Yeah. Same.
Well, we've got some similar life stories. You know, we've been on the wrong side of the tracks. You know, we've had, we made a few mistakes in our lives.
I think you meant the fun side of the tracks, but
it was for a while.
Fair.
Until that fun took over. That was the problem for me.
Preach.
Let's talk about the witnesses. The first one was Admiral Tim Gallaudet, and the second one was Lue Elizondo, Michael Shellenburger, and Mike Gold. And so my question is, what did you think about the witnesses? What was your view on them?
Well, here's what I can tell you. The lawmakers, and it was kind of like Groundhog Day, because it was like, wait, this was the same thing coming out of the Grush hearing. Well, coming out of the Grush hearing, you had AOC, Nancy Mace, and then Jamie Raskin, the guy who not officiated, but who ran one of Trump's impeachment scandals. He was there on the same dais with all these Freedom Caucus folks, and Raskin came out of that Grush hearing being like, for one, he told us at Askapol, I was told by people I trust that I need to be here to learn about this issue. And so he did. He listened to the people he trusts. I'm like, wait, is that your daughter or is that a big donor? But que sera, sera. Anyway, whoever it was that he trusts, they got him there to sit in the seat. And then when Jamie Raskin was leaving that hearing, he was like, I just have more questions. And he was like, everything I heard in there from Grush, Graves, everyone else, he's like, they seemed credible. Same response after this one. No one left that hearing being like questioning anything they said. Again, the biggest complaint I heard was from Luna saying, oh, they didn't talk about the classified information. And I'm like, there's a good reason for that, ma'am.
They weren't going to. They couldn't.
Yeah. And so, again, across ideology, we have an interview we're going to be dropping soon with Stephen Lynch, a Democrat from Massachusetts, who's probably like 15-termer, maybe a 10-termer. He's been there a long time. And he was the first person I interviewed in the hall because he was one of the first persons to ask his questions because he's so senior. And I was like, hey, I was surprised. I've worked for BUR in Boston. And I was like, hey, I was surprised to see you in there. And he was like, why? He's like, and he's like, everything I heard. And he actually came out of it a little bit more. This is where the beauty of Congress, like, we have so many flaws in America, all that. And yeah, it's easy to point out the flaws, but like the checks and balances built into our system of government is pretty beautiful, y'all, because they got something right in this little constitution thingy, but like having that Massachusetts liberal, you know, in the same room with these Freedom Caucus folks from Florida, they're learning from each other and they're learning from each other's questions, or their staffs are, but at the very minimum. And so that's where I really think in this 118th Congress, as much as so many folks in the community have been frustrated, I've been seeing Congress just like gain a little bit more intel.
It's an awakening.
Like their head is just, they're
It's an
learning as
awakening.
they go.
Yeah.
And like, it's kind of like me when I'm a professor at Hopkins or whatever, and seeing that student at the start of the semester and then at the end. Over time, you can see the drastic difference, but in the real time when I had to switch from red pens to pink because my red pen would give students heart attacks. So I had to tone it down with like a happy color, but you still get a million notes.
The new Crips and Bloods, the Republicans and the Democrats.
Right? So like you would see that growth, and I'm seeing that, or I've seen that with the UAP caucus and just with this Congress generally. Like, yeah, there's still some jokes. Yeah, there's still plenty of eye rolls. But the folks who are passionate, who care about the issue, or the motherfuckers who just have questions because their constituents have questions. Hey, what was that thing over my house?
Right.
You're their representative. Answer it. And oh, you thought it would be easy because you were like, hey, Air Force, answer it. Don't forget, with Senator Rick Scott, who used to be governor of Florida, and then Senator Tim Kaine, who used to be governor of Virginia, they both confirmed to Ask a Poll that when they were governor, they did not know what was above their airspace. And I think it was Rick Scott who said, hey, we'd call the Pentagon and say, hey, we're getting all these calls, people are freaking out, and the Pentagon would just be like, oh, we got it. But they kept them in the dark.
Right.
They never told the people what happened. And now you're seeing lawmakers like that be like, wait, did you have it? Or did you just not want us to put our National Guard fighter planes in the air alongside yours? And so you need a healthy level of cynicism.
Oh, yeah.
I call it I say it better usually, but like realistic cynicism. Like it's got to be founded in like books, reading. Like don't put too much trust in any of these politicians or in the government. Like, oh, this agency is going to fix my problem. But overall, the checks and balances are kind of beautiful in a way that like cuts through my the cynicism that I've invested a lot in.
Well, the witnesses, I don't know if you saw the makeup of it, but I think it was probably intentional, and I think in one way it probably hurt the hearing a little bit. We had two military, and then we had a reporter, and we had a guy that worked for the NASA panel. And I'm wondering if that probably was by design is my question. Now, the one thing I think was obvious, Matt, is if you want to know who the main show was in the last hearing, if I ask you that question, what would your answer be?
Dude, so honestly,
wouldn't it be David Grush?
In the last
not
one.
This one, the one before, should I say? That's what I meant. I meant by the last one before this.
That's why I like mentioned Graves earlier, and I kind of I felt so bad for Graves and the other witness.
Braver.
Yeah, sorry. Because we always are like, oh, the Grush hearing. But I'm like, no, there were other experts there.
Yeah.
And so
they balanced Grush out is what they did.
But exactly. And like here, why I'm sheepish is because this hearing happened on the day that the president-elect So my day on Wednesday started with me thinking like, oh, Trump's about to enter the Capitol. But oh, false alarm. It was just Vice President-elect J.D. Vance, him and his motorcade coming in. Well, then I go and I walk to the House side, and they're like, no, the House Republicans are actually meeting at the Hyatt Regency Hotel on Capitol Hill that's on the Senate side. So then I had to walk back over there. And actually, this is kind of cool. Tweeted about it last night. I'm just getting there, and there's like 2 reporters who I'd been talking to in the basement of the Capitol because they were outside of where House Republicans usually meet in this big room. And they were like, hey, where is it? And so I learned like, oh, it's actually Hyatt Regency. So then I go get an iced coffee, and they're there by the time I get there. So I'm chatting with them. First thing that happens is this black SUV, like, window rolls down in the back. And I'm like, shit, this guy's going to shoot me. And, like, I wouldn't judge him. I'd be like, hey, good call. You got good instincts, bro. But he just looks at me and he goes, hey, so what's up with that hearing, the UAP hearing in the House?
Oh, wow.
Dude, because this is a special unit. So they're like green fatigues and they got long guns. And
That's
I
cool.
just go fist bump the guy. Yeah. So like we got members of Capitol Police, these special units who are keyed in on this issue. And that's where I'm like, the inquisitiveness, because you'll get it even from some of these lawmakers' staffs, lawmakers who will like eye roll the issue or like just brush it aside. Well, then
do you think Grush helped with that? Do you think Grush contributed to that? Is that where you're going with this?
Grush, no. Grush changed the conversation.
Right.
Grush brought the conversation that the American people
Right.
were having into Congress. You know, he forced it, right? Like he forced it onto Congress and the government's lap. And I think many lawmakers were probably quietly, or no, pardon me, I know many lawmakers. There's still a handful of senators. Again, go listen to our 100 interviews with all senators, like Senator Bozeman from Arkansas. He was the chair of the Agriculture Committee. You know, he's like, I think now he's ranking member. Like, he's an ag guy. He stays in his lane, and he's going to be reelected for life. But when I asked him about the topic, he's like, wait, what do you know? You know, he's like,
interested.
He's engaged. He's watching. And so that's where, same with Senator John Fetterman, a Democrat from Pennsylvania. He's super into the topic, but he's not on the committees that deal with it. So it's not on his radar. And so that's where, we
are making progress in. From everything you're telling me, we're definitely making progress.
Yep. Done.
Yeah. I was going to kind of go over.
This community has literally woken Congress, just the global, like for 100 years, Congress, whatever that thing is. Well, hey, the 118th Congress, their eyes are open. They're now engaged. I know many of you are frustrated with the first hearing went, the second one. But guys, you had 2 public UFO hearings in 1 Congress in the House. Now you're about to get another one in the Senate. And incoming administration seems to be saying that they're taking this issue seriously as well.
And I was going to say, I'm not political. You know, as a pastor, I have to pastor to Republicans and Democrats. So I'm not political. And so when I say this, I'm not taking a side. But Trump, on the interview with Joe Rogan, he said he was going to open the files to JFK files and the UFO files. And then also, can't remember, Les Friedman, he also said it. And I sent him a message on X. I sent him a message asking him to fulfill the promises that he made to the American people.
I mean,
whether he does or not,
that to me would be the most basic thing I would expect from everyone. But oh my God, you have to beg the political class for just that simplicity. Like, hey, you said this? And that's part of like, I was at another podcast for, my like national news stuff earlier, and I'm like, what is this sky is falling mantra that we're getting out of the media? Guys, Trump is doing what he told us he would do. Like RFK as health secretary, he told us that. Basically.
That's what a lot of people are saying. So I hear what you're saying there. That he's the one that follows through. Hopefully he will on this.
But so don't forget, as you were saying, you're not partisan. 2016, Hillary Clinton, there's a New York Times article. She kind of vaguely, in a very Clinton-esque lying way, she was like, hey, I want to open this up if I get elected. Well, that didn't happen, young lady.
Some people still lament that because of that, for that reason right there.
No, it's not like I'm keeping my eyes on this administration. And I haven't even gone back to it. But I guess last year I also asked JD Vance about this topic. And it doesn't stand out in my mind as anything. So I'm actually got to go and look that back up because I might be sending that out to my followers in a minute. But that's where the people around Trump really do matter. And there's kind of a debate on it. But it's kind of the same way Congress works. Yeah. Like Senator Gillibrand, she at least wants to be passionate about the issue. She at least wants the community to think she's passionate and engaged about the issue. Now, she might fully be passionate and engaged about the issue. Community doesn't believe that, but like she's there. She wants a seat at the table. Trump, he tells kind of everyone what they want to hear if they're telling him what he wants to hear. But so with Trump, his picks really do matter, especially kind of those lower level ones, those deputies or whatever. And so that's where I have seen, and I could see in the future. I saw in the first administration. So here's an example. So like, there will be gatekeepers around Trump. And that's outside of deep state or whatever that is. But in the first Trump administration, I covered cannabis. I was correspondent, drug correspondent for Playboy, Rolling Stone, Vice News Tonight. Like I was, and I kind of still am. We have an Ask a Poll drugs vertical or new site if people want to check it out, where I interviewed all 100 senators on marijuana policy this year, which we're in the process of dropping. But so in the last administration, I had it confirmed that Trump was going to legalize, he was going to come out in favor of legalizing cannabis, marijuana. Well, that was when Kellyanne Conway was his chief. Once Mark Meadows became his chief, that was scrapped. Why? Because Kellyanne Conway was reading the polls and she saw that 70+% of Americans, Republicans, Democrats, independents, and indifferents alike, were all on board with the topic or just over the topic, over the war on drugs. They're like, we're fine with legalization. Well, once Mark Meadows came in, he was a Southern evangelical Republican. And for him, marijuana is evil. Like it never saw Trump's desk.
Right.
So even though that could have actually, some say, potentially gotten him the win in 2020 because the American public so broadly supports that. And like cannabis is a rare issue where you actually see Democrats would vote for a Republican on that topic alone. And I think that's tied to, you have a family member in jail for stuff that's now legal. Or, you can't vote because this is on your record and you want that scrubbed. So it's a rare issue that pollsters don't even get why there's crossover, why a Democrat would vote for a Republican on the issue. So all that to say, the people around Trump really do matter.
It just seems crazy to me to put people in jail for pot. It's never made sense to me at all. I don't smoke it or anything, but I'm just like, then you put them in with people who've raped and murdered and everything else, and even if something else, even if it's addiction, especially if it's an addiction, if even a higher drug, get them help. Don't stinking send them to prison. That makes no sense to me at all.
Bro, I was a homeless cokehead at 18, and all I needed was help. And like these days, I'm a regular cannabis user. I've written about it for The Guardian and NBC Think. But like, I've got 2 bulging discs, one in the bottom of my back from the Family Landscape Company, and then one in my neck from covering Congress for 18 years now. So like, the way I deal with that chronic pain is edibles during the day, and then later at night, once I'm done working, then I'll smoke some because that's more cerebral for me and goes in my head. But like, marijuana has been very important for me and my body. I am not recommending it to you or anyone. Talk to your doctor or even DM me, because it might not be what is right for you, and it's not right for many people. But yeah.
So what Daya put up there? Did you see what Daya put up there? Can you see it? It's true though. Only 2 things.
Literally, cannabis and UFOs are the 2 most nonpartisan issues in Washington.
He's right.
Possibly crypto as well.
Well, I like the fact that you put qualifier in there. It's like alcohol. I don't drink either, and the reason I don't drink is I got a long history of alcoholics in my family. My dad died at 49 from it. My grandfather drank himself to death, and stuff. So, for me, but for other people, it's not an issue. And so I think it's something that, you have to think hard about, decide whether you have an issue or not. But anyway, I just don't think putting people in jail. When we did that with the what was that? Trying to get rid of alcohol. The word's not coming to me right now. Prohibition. Thank you. And it's like, what did we learn from that? We just, it got worse. I went to Arkansas one time to a dry county, and they had more alcoholics in the dry county than in the county where it was legal. So, I mean, it's just crazy. Not really what we're supposed to be talking about, but.
Oh, bro. No, I'll go on this tangent. What did Prohibition give us? Prohibition gave us the mafia.
Yeah, exactly. And organized crime.
That is the lasting legacy.
Right.
No, that and a lot of alcoholism.
Right. Right. Because you overindulged. You got to get it more because you weren't going to be able to get it. And yeah, I can see that. Anyway, let's go to the witnesses. Let me just, if you don't mind, Matt, I'll just kind of bring up what I thought each one of them brought to the table. As far as Lue goes, to me, he was the David Grush for this hearing, because he was the man with the knowledge.
I didn't answer that earlier. Yeah.
So that and then when we go to Gallaudet, he's an admiral. We mentioned that earlier. When an admiral came on board, everybody got nervous when I was in the Navy and stuff. And so he was one of the highest ranking military personnel to ever, testify at a hearing like this. And then you've got Michael Shellenburger. And what was important about Shellenburger was that he brought in the Immaculate Constellation document, which went into congressional record. And then we have Mr. Gold. And really all I could find that he brought to the table was this idea, which wasn't a bad idea, about using AI to go in and look at the NASA archives. And there's, probably millions of pictures in there. And the job for humans to do it would take forever, whereas AI can do it. But I had to laugh at one point, Matt. I had to laugh because he said that NASA was the most transparent company he'd ever worked for. Transparent.
How does he work?
Yeah, it's like, what was he smoking is what I wanted to know, because it's like Ross Coulthart just mentioned this, and this is about NASA. He was taken to NASA headquarters, and he's looking at one of their screens, and he sees these donuts up there. And so he goes, well, hey, must be the Starlink satellites. And so he asked one of the people there if it was, and they said no. And the next second, they changed the feed. so that it wasn't being televised. And it's like, I wonder how many times a day or a week they do that. And is it any wonder that people call NASA never a straight answer? You know, because that's what we feel. But that's what Gold was representing and trying to, know us with this idea that NASA is transparent. You know, there's just no way in the world that that's happening. You know.
You just reminded me, I forgot to post a picture as I was leaving the hearing room, going out to run over to the Senate side or to interview Lynch in the hall and then go over there. I paused and I took pictures of this lady's socks because she had these awesome, just baller NASA socks. But I forgot to post it, so I'll have to slide it into one of our next posts. But yeah, I mean, the government, and it's even like hard, like what is the government? And like I studied philosophy in the undergrad, like there's the debate, like Congress, is it an it or a them? And it's kind of both. But that's where something happens in the ether where no, nothing in the government is transparent. Like I just found an old FOIA earlier today. I think the DEA listed my FOIA publicly. And I was like, wait, I never got the documents. And it's like, oh yeah, it was rejected. So that's how transparent you are, that you announced to the world that my bureau was rejected for your FOIA, but you don't actually send me any information answering even like any of the tangential questions.
Right.
No.
Well, that was just
especially
funny.
Now, these days with the space race in China and all them, like NASA would be foolish to be utterly transparent, right? Like, let's be real, right?
Yeah. He just felt like a fluff witness to me because
I was gonna say marshmallows and unicorns.
Yeah, that's exactly
Enjoy
how
that life, brother.
Yeah, and I think
Wish
of the
I
other
could live in that bubble.
To have somebody like Chris Mellon or Colonel Carl Nell or somebody like that, or even having a civilian, like Robert Hastings or, Mario Woods or somebody like that, that would have been better. But maybe they're saving them for the next hearing and stuff is what I'm hoping. One thing I appreciated about Lou, we're going to close this up. I know you're sick. I don't want to go over 2 hours on you, but
all good.
Yeah, I'm worried about you. I'm
actually enjoying not doing the other work.
This is like, skipping homework, huh? Is that what it is? You're out hanging out with your friends and you're skipping homework. I don't blame you on that one. All right. Well, one of the things that Lou, when he was answering questions, or at least right before he did, when he did his 5-minute monologue, he started off by saying UAPs are real. Now, this is a part that I paid special attention to.
That was a powerful part, yeah.
Yeah, the U.S. is in possession of UAP tech, as is our rivals, and this is the new arms race. And I've publicly said that whoever wins this race rules the world. This is not a small thing we're talking about.
Yeah,
this is an arms race, and whoever wins it rules the world. Whoever breaks this tech first is going to have a major advantage against everyone else.
Right? I mean, but that's what we saw. And that's where I think the importance of this hearing, now that Gillibrand wants the Senate hearing to focus in part on Langley incursion, we had to move, look it up, but I think we had to move like a full fighter wing. These billion or hundreds of millions of dollars worth of advanced U.S. technology. That meant nothing. We couldn't fly our planes, our jets out of Langley, and they had to move them somewhere else because of those drone or whatever incursions. And so, yeah, this is already having real world consequences.
Didn't they give some kind of lame explanation for that? It seemed like, or maybe that was when the hurricane or something was coming or weather, but they moved them all from one place to another. And I'm going, well, if these were the same thing, they always have a lame excuse instead of just coming out and being honest. Juan, do you see my wife She says, "Thanks so much for coming on, Matt. You really helped me understand what's going on and stuff." And so
You rock, girl.
really appreciate that. After Lou got done mentioning that, then he was asked some questions. Representative Mace asked this. These are pointed questions, and what's important is that Lou was under oath. Every one of these witnesses were under oath, just like the previous hearing. Moultrie and Bray were not under oath. Kirkpatrick wasn't under oath. And so there's a whole different feeling, at least as far as I know, they weren't. But under the hearings, I know that they were under oath. They raised their hands. They took an oath.
Yep.
And so when Lou makes
Actually,
these,
I published video of that.
Right.
Because it matters.
Right. It absolutely matters, because if he lies, where do you think he's going to go? What happens when you lie to Congress? You go to prison.
You either become president or you go to prison.
There you go. That's the other side of the coin. That's the other side of the coin. Well, normally, if you don't get elected president,
True.
then you go to jail. But anyway, so she goes, Representative Mace says, has the federal government conducted secret UAP crash retrieval programs? And Lou said, yes. Then Representative Mace asked, were they designed to identify and reverse engineer alien craft? And Lou said, yes. And so there really shouldn't be a question anymore about crash retrieval and reverse engineering. And I feel bad for Bob. There's still people I know that do not believe Bob. And I know he has some issues with his educational credentials. But the reason a lot of people didn't believe him is because he made the same claims that David Grush is making. He made the same claims that Lou just confirmed under oath. And so, me personally, I don't think there should be a question anymore about whether there's crash retrieval or reverse engineering. To me, that question has been answered, because he's under oath and he's at risk of either being the president or going to prison.
I'm writing this down just because, well, you're kind of teaching me like those terms, because now that's what I kind of need to ask some senators.
Right.
Hey, Senator Kelly, I know you don't believe in like that there's anything extraterrestrial exists. Cool. But has the Air Force ever gone out and retrieved a crash near Luke Air Force Base? And that's where sometimes coming at it from a different angle, they're forced to be honest.
Look into the Office of Global Access. A lot of people believe all roads lead to it. Now here's my paraphrase of the Fight Club. It says, first rule of Fight Club is no one talks about Fight Club. But if you are paying disability for people hurt during Fight Club, it's impossible to deny that Fight Club exists. And so here's my parallel. Lou confirmed that service members have been paid disability for NHI related injuries. And so for what kind of injuries? NHI related injuries, what we call biological effects. And so how can you deny it when we're actually paying people, who've been injured by being too close to UAPs, NHI, and stuff like that? And so it's like, how can you deny it?
And those are the questions. And again, that's why, even though this week's hearing didn't have all the fireworks or the smoking gun that some people were looking for, ... Patience. Like, Congress is a turtle. Even though the tortoise is now gone over in the Senate. Goodbye, Mitch McConnell. But, Congress moves slow. And even though a lot of us in the moment are frustrated by that, because we can go on our phones and get instant gratification, ... I think in the end, when we all take a step back, we'll realize, Congress not being able to do that knee-jerk reaction or that knee-jerk reaction, in the end, hopefully protects all of us, because
Right.
those checks and balances are there for a reason. But all right, that's over here. Over here is Congress. You fund the executive branch. Their brain should be your brain. Any information they have came from your funding. You control it. So you should be able to get to the bottom of it and a lot quicker. So I told you, I'm always conflicted.
Well, one of the things that I think we should look at, and I know people have different opinions on it, and I know experiencers. I'm one myself. I don't talk too much about it normally, and I've got friends on both ends. I got more friends on the one side than I do on the other. But the phenomenon is it's a phenomenon. It's like many things. There are things that go bump in the night that aren't so nice. But I think if you look at it historically, I don't think they're a threat in the sense of taking over the world, because if you look at the historical record, especially if you go way back, it seems like they've been, at least some of them have been here for a long, long time. And so I want to tie this in right now. Shellenburger talked.
Wait, I've seen Independence Day as well, and Men in Black, so I'm with you, brother. Just kidding.
Well, that's the bad narrative. I tend to lean the other way. And here's one of the reasons why. It's only one incident, but in the Immaculate Constellation, which is about the different sensors we're using to try to track UAPs and stuff like that. But there's a story in there. I don't know if you've heard it yet or not. It was the first time I heard it, of a F-22 that was in its patrol, and it sees a UAP and it tries to target it, lock on it. And all of a sudden these 5 or 6 orbs come around and box it in and literally force it out of its patrol area. But the fact that they didn't shoot it down, the fact that they didn't destroy it, they were only as aggressive as they had to be, to protect, obviously probably something that was one of their own and stuff. And so, it's just stuff like that. And the fact that, if with the technology they have, and I know people talk about the long game and everything else, but with the technology they have, if they were truly malevolent, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be Independence Day. It would be the end of us, because we can't, with the technology that they're showing. How are we going to stop that? I mean, talk to Captain Fravor and what he saw with the most advanced technology we had at the time. It made him look silly. And so that's just my personal opinion on it. I think there's so much fear out there and so much fear mongering. It's, I get it on the other side too. Every time I turn around, some Christians coming up to me telling me it's the end of the world. It's the end of the world. And usually it has nothing to do with biblical prophecy. It has to do with the world's changing and they're not comfortable with it. And so therefore, if the world's not like I think it should be, then it's got to be the end of the world. God's going to change it all because I can't handle it anymore. And so I'm just trying to help people understand you don't have to be afraid. Like I said, if they were here to harm us, I don't think that we would be here. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't bad things out there, because it's called a phenomenon. It's not one thing, it's many things. But I just don't want people to have to live in fear, because it doesn't really accomplish anything. It just makes your life miserable.
See, not to disagree, but to disagree.
You can disagree.
I think that fear is definitely what's woken up these senators.
Oh yeah, and you got it valid.
The Langley's, the Langley stuff.
We wouldn't have this. We wouldn't be where we are right now if it wasn't for the threat narrative. And so I'm not demeaning that in any way.
Well, no, but I mean, with them, I think the fear kind of just like cuts to the bone, because for one, you're our lawmakers and you control the military. So that balloon invasion and then the other, whatever they were, that's on you, Congress. And that's kind of like the beauty of Ascapol. Like, I'm a mirror and I make them uncomfortable and I fucking love it. Because maybe we have a false sense of security or whatever. We're America. We're the best. We're always going to be the best. Like, oh, the greatest nations have fallen and all that. But now having lawmakers finally kind of, because what I said earlier, Senator Rich, I don't read UFO stories. Well, you're useless because there are obvious UFOs. Again, that balloon that invaded American airspace, when it first came in there, y'all didn't know what it was. So that was technically a UFO, sir, or UAP, whatever you want to call it. And so that's where you're still having lawmakers not wanting to really stare themselves in the mirror and say, are we safe? Is America protected? And like the fact that now they're just kind of like lazily being like, we don't know what it is, but we're 100% certain it's not extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
So like, again, Senator Kelly, so you're pretty certain that China, our adversary, is regularly in American airspace. That's why, like, I really want these lawmakers to sit with that thought.
That's scarier than UAPs.
Right?
I mean, than aliens. It really is.
It literally. And so that's where I think the more of these questions they ask, and I think they're learning this, the more they ask, the more they have to stare themselves in the mirror. And, you know, the way they have fallen short of this beautiful little thing called the Constitution. We're like, again, don't forget, America, we still are under an AUMF, authorization for military force, with Iraq that dates back to, what, 2 decades ago. And bipartisan members of Congress and the Senate have tried to address that. But no, because Congress as itself has just enabled itself over the years to just shirk its responsibility and its responsibility to each of us as its citizens, that they've just given up so much of their power because Congress has perfected re-election. And they don't get re-elected by dealing with the hard issues, the tough issues. They get re-elected by kicking the can on all those. And anytime Congress basically has the chance to just say, oh, well, that's the executive branch. Oh, that's them. No. Congress, even though you're a separate branch, like, you are the oversight. Like, the executive branch is nothing without you because you have the power of the purse. And so I think we all, as the citizens, have allowed and enabled Congress to just become lazy and to shirk their oath and their responsibility to all of us, where, no, you shouldn't hide from these questions. Look in the mirror. It might not be pretty, but that means you might have fucking shit on your face.
Right. Let me kind of clarify and balance what I said to make sure everybody understands. I think the government's role is to protect its citizens. And I think if you have an unknown, something that's unknown, that has more tech abilities than you do, you have to look at it as the idea, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And so that's the role of the government.
Wait, don't clarify. I liked your optimism. I was just doing the flip side of the coin.
But on a personal level.
Yeah.
I don't think that every citizen should be living in fear every day, because there's a lot of things that we could be afraid of right now. And I understand why, and I have the utmost respect for Lue. Lue's an awesome person in my book, but I understand if he had come to Congress with a story about ET the extraterrestrial, I don't think we'd be here right now. And so it's unknown to him. And so if it's unknown, you have to prepare for the worst, hope for the best. But in our individual lives, you know, whether we're talking about the nuclear clock being 3 minutes till midnight or whatever, we can't really live our lives if we're living in fear. Amen. Now, I had one other thing I didn't get a chance to finish with yesterday. And Steve thought it was like religious, and that really wasn't my point. But, you know, there are some people that, you know, that say that they're not benevolent because they didn't stop us dropping bombs in Japan. They didn't stop any of the nuclear disasters. They didn't stop the millions of people being killed in World War II. They haven't helped us with famines and stuff like that. And I, it hit me. And like I said, this is not a religious argument. This is simply, I think most people, who are spiritual would look at God and say, well, God is benevolent. And yet if we use that same criteria for them and we placed it on God, because God didn't stop any of those things either, I don't think anyone would argue that God isn't benevolent, And so, I hope people understand that, we are trying to figure out who they are. That's why we want to get to disclosure. And I don't think that we have to live in fear the rest of our lives until we get there.
And I would just add, even if we get full disclosure, that's not going to make any of us what's that word? Omniscient.
Omniscient.
Omnipotent.
Omnipotent.
Like none of us are going to have the mind of God. And so
Right.
I don't think, like, if that's our goal, or if that's your goal, like, lower that goal, because you're never going to be able to reach it. And if you come at it like super, not like it comes across as self-righteous, but like, if you're the smartest person in the room, maybe you should shut up and listen. Because I know I'm the professor in a lot of classrooms, but I have to remind myself I'm not the smartest person in any of those rooms, And it's probably the kid in the back who's quiet the whole time, who maybe smirks a little bit. That kid's gonna be my boss one day.
Right.
Well,
Matt, I know you're sick. I know you've been sick for days, and I just over a week, I think he said. And I really appreciate you sucking it up to come on. And like I said, we just hung out for a couple hours. That's what we did. And I just want to tell you how much I enjoy having you on the podcast. Like I said, a kindred spirit. That's the only thing I can explain it. You're my brother from another mother, and I'm just letting you know how much I appreciate you. And if you can stick around just for a minute when I get this shut down, I'd like to talk to you about something real quick. I'm going to go ahead and shut the podcast down. I'm just going to remind everyone that's watching this, if you haven't subscribed, I'd really appreciate you subscribe. If you have subscribed, one of the things you can really do to help is go ahead and share this video. Go ahead and hit the like. That'll help it get up in the algorithm for YouTube. This is really the only way I have to advertise it, because I'm still not quite there with YouTube yet. So you can really help. Anyway, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast.